Today, we are tackling the biggest economic paradox of our time. We hear the headlines everywhere. We are the fastest growing economy in the world, routinely hitting massive 7% to 8% GDP growth targets. But if you walk down a regular street, it does not always feel like an economic boom. Why is that? That's a great question, and the answer comes down to the fact that GDP is just a gross number. It tells you that economic pie is getting bigger, but it tells you absolutely nothing about who is actually eating it. That brings us to today's breakdown: inclusive growth versus exclusive growth. Let's start with the dark side of that equation. What does exclusive growth actually look like on the ground? Think of it as a K shaped economic trajectory. The top arm of the K is shooting upward. That is, the formal sector, large corporations, and high skilled tech workers are seeing their wealth and productivity multiply. But the bottom arm of the K is sliding downward and stagnating. That is your informal sector, which makes up the vast majority of the workforce. They remain trapped in low wage, casual, and insecure labor. Exclusive growth means the benefits of economic expansion are captured almost entirely by the top tier. So it essentially widens the income gap, which economists measure using the Gini coefficient. Add in agricultural distress and regional disparities where a few urban hubs boom while rural hinterlands are left behind, and you have a recipe for the geographical exclusive growth too. Exactly, and here is why exclusive growth is a massive threat. It leads to a dead end called demand constrained growth. If the bottom 80% of the population is not seeing a rise in real wages, they don't have purchasing power. Domestic demand dries up, factories stop producing because nobody is buying, and the whole economic engine stalls. You simply cannot sustain a robust multi-trillion-dollar economy purely on the luxury consumption of the top 10%, which pivots us perfectly to the antidote: inclusive growth. In policy circles, we often hear the phrase Sabka Vikas, meaning collective development. But beyond the buzzwords, what is the actual economic framework? Inclusive growth is fundamentally multidimensional. It abandons the old trickle down theory and focuses on broad based participation. We measure it using comprehensive metrics like the multidimensional poverty index, which looks far beyond mere income to track a population's health, education, and overall standard of living. True inclusive growth must simultaneously create productive employment, eradicate poverty, and close gender and regional disparities. It is about equality of opportunity. But how does a developing economy actually engineer that shift? It sounds like trying to change the tires of a moving truck. It requires deliberate, targeted policy interventions. First, you need structural transformation. A country has to move its surplus labor out of low yield subsistence agriculture and into labor intensive manufacturing and formalized services. Second, within agriculture itself, you need diversification, moving farmers away from just basic cereals towards high value cash crops, dairy, and food processing to boost rural incomes. You would imagine technology is the ultimate equalizer here, right? It is, provided it is deployed correctly. India's digital public infrastructure, specifically the JAM Trinity of Jan Dhan bank accounts, Aadhaar identity, and mobile connectivity, is a global masterclass in inclusive growth. It leapfrogged traditional banking barriers, allowing direct benefit transfers and welfare to reach the poorest citizens instantly, eliminating the middlemen and leakages. But technology can't fix everything. You still need healthy, educated citizens to participate in that digitized economy. That is spot on. The absolute bedrock of inclusive growth is human capital. If public healthcare is underfunded or if rural schools lack quality infrastructure, social mobility stops in its tracks. Furthermore, we have to address female labor force participation. You cannot have inclusive growth if half of your demographic dividend is sitting on the sidelines. Empowering women economically creates an immediate multiplier effect on household health child nutrition, and local consumer demand. So, to summarize our scorecard today, exclusive growth is blindly chasing the GDP number at the cost of raising inequality and eventual economic stagnation. Inclusive growth is a heavier lift. It requires building human capital and formalizing jobs. But it builds a resilient, sustainable economy where the lowest strata actually experience upward mobility. It is the difference between a country that is rich on a spreadsheet and a country where the citizens are actually thriving.